She stood up midway through dinner like she was accepting an award, raising her sparkling cider to freeze the room. She said, "I am pregnant with triplets, and you are buying me a bigger house." My mother clapped. My father nodded. It was as if this was the natural order of things. Then, she dropped a set of keys into my palm. I smiled, handed her a thick envelope, and watched the realization hit. They had been living in a lie I had allowed for way too long. "My name is Julissa Winmere." I whispered this to myself as I turned my sedan onto the winding pavement of Crestview Ridge. It was a grounding technique I had learned from a corporate therapist after my first year at Vanguard Meridian Integrity Office. You say your name to remind yourself of who owns your skin. You say your name to separate your identity from the people who are about to try and consume it. The dashboard clock read 4:45 in the afternoon. I was 15 minutes late, a calculation I had made with precision. Arriving early meant being put to work in the kitchen, chopping celery while my mother critiqued my haircut. Arriving on time meant being part of the greeting line, forced to hug distant relatives who smelled like mothballs and judgment. Arriving 15 minutes late meant the chaos was already in motion, and I could slip in like a shadow. That was my role in this family, the shadow that paid the electric bill. On the passenger seat sat a pumpkin pie I had purchased from a high-end bakery in Greyhaven. I had transferred it into my own glass dish before leaving my apartment, burying the cardboard box in my recycling bin. It was a pathetic deception, but it was necessary. If I brought a store-bought pie in its original box, my mother would sigh and say I was too busy with my cold corporate career to care about family tradition. If I baked one from scratch and it was imperfect, my sister would make a joke about how domestic life clearly wasn't my forte. The transferred pie was the path of least resistance. I pulled into the driveway and felt my stomach tighten. The driveway was already full. I recognized my father's truck, looking surprisingly washed, and the flashy leased convertible my sister, Delia, drove, but there were other cars I did not recognize. A beige sedan with a church bumper sticker, a couple of SUVs that looked too new to belong to anyone my parents usually socialized with. I parked on the street, grabbed the pie, and walked toward the front door. The house loomed over me. It was a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters. It was the picture of suburban success. Every time I looked at it, I saw a ledger. I saw the 20% down payment wire transfer. I saw the monthly escrow updates. I saw the property tax bill that had arrived in my email inbox 3 days ago. I opened the door and the wall of noise hit me instantly. "Don't make a fuss," I muttered under my breath. It was the command my mother had drilled into me since I was 5 years old. It was the family motto, etched into our crest, right below a picture of a rug being swept under. "Don't make a fuss. Julissa, be easy. Julissa, your sister is sensitive. Julissa." The living room was packed. This was not a standard Thanksgiving dinner. It was an audience. I spotted Mrs. Gable from the church council holding a glass of wine near the fireplace. I saw 2 women I vaguely recognized from Delia's Instagram stories. Fellow influencers who likely paid for their followers. There were neighbors I hadn't seen in a decade. My stomach dropped. You do not invite the neighbors to Thanksgiving unless you are planning a performance. You do not curate a crowd like this unless you need witnesses. My mother, wearing an apron that looked pristine and unused, spotted me from across the room. She did not smile. She just waved me over with a frantic flapping of her hand, like she was shooing a fly. "You're late," she hissed as I approached, leaning in to kiss my cheek. Her perfume was overpowering, floral and desperate. "Put the pie in the kitchen and fix your face. You look like you're conducting an audit." "Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Mom," I said. "Delia is in the sunroom," she said, ignoring me. "Go say hello, and be enthusiastic. She is very hormonal today." I made my way through the crowd, nodding at strangers who looked at me with vague curiosity. To them, I was just the background character, the sister who did something with numbers in the city, the one who wasn't Delia. I found my sister holding court in the sunroom. Delia Marrow was sitting on the love seat, her legs tucked under her. She was wearing a cream-colored knit dress that clung to her frame, designed to highlight a curve that wasn't quite there yet. Her makeup was flawless, the kind of no-makeup look that takes 2 hours and $70 worth of product to achieve. Standing behind her, with his hand resting possessively on her shoulder, was Tanner Sloan. Tanner was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that made secondary antagonists for teen dramas. He had perfect teeth, a strong jawline, and a resume that consisted entirely of entrepreneurial ventures that never seemed to launch. Delia looked up as I entered. Her eyes swept over me, starting at my boots and ending at my hairline. It was a scanner check. She was looking for cracks. She was looking for submission. "Yulissa," she cried out, extending a hand but not getting up. "I was worried you wouldn't make it. I know how busy you are with your paperwork." "I'm here," I said, taking her hand briefly. Her palm was clammy. "You look nice. Delia. Hi, Tanner." "Hey, Liz," Tanner said, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Long drive. The traffic out of the city must be killer." "It was fine," I said. "This house is just so packed today," Delia sighed, leaning back against Tanner. "I was telling Mom, I don't know how we're going to fit everyone. It feels so claustrophobic in here lately, especially with the studio gear taking up the guest room. I need so much more space for the channel." "It's a 4-bedroom house. Delia," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "For now," she said, sharing a secretive smile with Tanner. "But you know how life expands." We were called to dinner before I could dissect that comment. The dining room table had been extended with 2 extra leaves, covered in a white tablecloth that I recognized as one I had bought for my mother 3 Christmases ago. The seating arrangement was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive engineering. Delia and Tanner were seated at the center of the long side of the table, facing the room like monarchs. My father sat at the head, my mother at the foot. The important guests, the church ladies, the influencers, were clustered around Delia. I walked around the table, looking for my name card. I found it at the very end, squeezed between the wall and a high chair containing my second cousin's toddler. I was in the splash zone. I looked at my mother. She was busy pouring wine for Mrs. Gable, avoiding my gaze. It was not an accident. It was a ranking system. Dinner began with a prayer led by my father, who thanked God for blessings we are about to receive and the generosity of spirit. I kept my eyes open, staring at the turkey. It looked dry. As the bowls of mashed potatoes and green beans circulated, the conversation was dominated by Delia. She spoke about her YouTube channels: Amelia Revenge Stories, Juliet Revenge Stories, Sloan Revenge Stories, as if they were Fortune 500 companies. "The engagement on the last video was insane," Delia said, gesturing with her fork. "We are talking 6,000 views in the first hour. The algorithm is finally picking up the domestic drama angle. People love seeing the nursery prep content, but honestly, filming in that tiny spare room is a nightmare. The lighting is all wrong." "You make it work, sweetie," my mother said, beaming. "You are so creative." "I try," Delia sighed. "But Tanner and I were looking at those new builds over in Emerald Hills. You know, the ones with the double-height ceilings. That is the kind of aesthetic my subscribers expect. This house is just so dated." My father nodded sagely, chewing his turkey. "We want you to have the best, Delia. You know that." I cut my meat in silence. I felt the familiar burn of indigestion starting before I had even swallowed a bite. They were talking about this house, the house with the mortgage that was auto-paid from my checking account on the 1st of every month, as if it were a starter jacket they had outgrown. "Yulissa," Delia called out down the table, her voice pitching up so everyone could hear. "You're quiet. How is the boring job?" "It pays the bills," I said. Delia laughed, a tinkling sound that triggered a ripple of chuckles from her entourage. "Oh, Yulissa, always so serious. You need to manifest some abundance. Sis, you worry too much about the small stuff." "Risk management isn't small stuff," I said. "It is about seeing the crash before it happens." "Well, no crashes here," Tanner said, raising his glass. Only rocket ships. The dinner dragged on for 45 minutes. I deflected questions about why I was still single, why I lived in an apartment instead of a house, and why I hadn't brought a friend. I watched them eat the food I knew my father had paid for with the credit card I paid off last week. It was a closed loop of consumption, and I was the generator powering it. Then came dessert. My mother cleared the plates with a manic energy. She brought out the pies, my transferred pumpkin pie and 3 others, but no one reached for a server. The air in the room changed. It became charged, static and sharp. Delia stood up. She picked up her glass of sparkling cider. She didn't tap it with a spoon. She just held it up, catching the light from the chandelier. "Everyone," she said. Her voice trembled with rehearsed emotion. The room froze. I watched as 6 different hands reached into pockets and purses. Phones were raised. The red recording dots appeared on screens. They were filming. This was content. "Tanner and I have been keeping a secret," Delia said. Looking directly into the lens of the nearest iPhone, she placed a hand on her flat stomach. Tanner stood up and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. It was a pose straight out of a stock photo. "We went to the doctor last week," Delia continued. She paused for effect. "And we aren't just having a baby." My mother let out a gasp that sounded like she was deflating. "We are having 3, Delia announced. "I am pregnant with triplets." The room detonated. My mother shrieked, clapping her hands over her mouth, tears instantly streaming down her face. My father stood up so fast his chair tipped over. The church ladies were cooing. The influencers were zooming in. Tanner was grinning like he had just won the lottery, waving to the room. "Triplets!" my mother screamed. "Oh, my grandbabies, 3 of them. A miracle." I sat still. I watched the performance. Triplets. 3 babies. In this economy, in this family, with Tanner's unemployment and Delia's creative direction. Delia let the applause wash over her for exactly 30 seconds. Then, she turned. She pivoted her body so she was facing the end of the table. She was facing me. The room quieted down. Sensing the shift, the cameras followed her gaze. I was now in the frame. "Ulissa," Delia said. Her voice was sweet, syrupy, but her eyes were hard flint. "You know what this means, right?" I put my fork down. "Congratulations, Delia." "This house," she said, gesturing to the walls around us. "It is 2,000 square feet. It is way too small for 3 babies and a studio. We can't stay here." She took a step toward me. The room held its breath. This was the climax of the scene. "We need a fresh start," Delia said. "A real family home, and since you are the rich auntie, the godmother—" She paused, smiling that bright, terrifying smile. "You are going to buy me a bigger house, the one in Emerald Hills. We picked it out." My mother clapped her hands together. "Oh, what a wonderful idea. Ulissa can certainly afford it. She has no dependents. It takes a village, right?" "It takes a village, Mrs." Gable echoed. My father nodded. "It's the right thing to do. Ulissa, for the family." Delia reached into the pocket of Tanner's jacket. She pulled out a set of keys. They were shiny, brass keys on a keychain that said, "Future." She walked down the length of the table and stopped right in front of me. She dropped the keys into my palm. They clattered against the china plate. "We set up a viewing for you this week," Delia said, "so you can sign the papers. Consider it your contribution, since you won't be changing diapers." The room chuckled. A soft, indulgent sound. They thought this was charming. They thought this was a demand I would bow to because I always bowed. I looked at the keys in my hand. They felt cold. I looked at Delia's expectant face. I looked at my mother, who was nodding encouragingly, as if I were a toddler taking my first steps. I stood up. I picked up the keys. I held them up so the light caught them, just like Delia had done with her glass. "Triplets," I said. My voice was calm, lower than hers. "That is a lot of responsibility." "It is," Delia said, her smile faltering just a fraction. That is why we need the help. I agree, I said. You need stability. You need a home that is secure. Exactly, Delia said, her eyes lighting up. She thought she had won. She thought the script was holding. Actually, I said, I have been thinking about real estate a lot lately. In fact, I already found a house, Delia gasped, genuine delight washing over her face. You did? In Emerald Hills? Oh my God, Ulissa, you are the best. When can we move in? I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a forensic accountant who has just found the missing zero. You misunderstood, I said. I reached into my tote bag sitting on the floor. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. It was sealed. The house I found, I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs of the room, is for me? Delia blinked. What? I bought a townhouse, I said. In the Lake Briar district. I closed on it yesterday. But, Delia looked at the keys in my hand, then at the envelope. But what about us? What about the triplets? We can't fit here. I dropped the keys she had given me onto the table. They landed with a heavy, dead thud. Then, I placed the envelope next to them. That sounds like a problem, I said. Ulissa, my mother scolded, her voice sharp. Stop teasing your sister. This is serious. I am being serious, I said. I looked around the table, meeting the eyes of the strangers, the neighbors, and my parents. I am moving out, tomorrow. You don't live here, Tanner said, confused. You live in the apartment. I don't mean I am moving my body, I said. I mean I am moving my money. I pushed the envelope toward the center of the table. It slid across the white tablecloth, stopping right in front of the turkey carcass. For 10 years, I said, I have been the weather you all ignore until it rains. Well, look outside. Ulissa, you are ruining the moment, Delia snapped, the tears of joy drying up into angry red splotches. Just take the keys and buy the house. Don't be selfish. I am not being selfish, I said gently. I am being accurate. I picked up my purse. I didn't look back at the pie. And just so everyone is clear, I said, looking at the ceiling, then at the floor, and finally resting my gaze on my father, whose face had gone pale. This house you are all sitting in, the one you want to sell to upgrade. I paused. It is not yours to sell. It never was. People often ask how a family breaks. They imagine a hammer hitting a vase, a singular moment of violence where everything shatters into jagged pieces on the floor. But that is not how it happens. A family does not break like a vase. It erodes like a coastline. It is the slow, rhythmic washing away of boundaries. The tide coming in day after day, taking an inch of sand, then a foot, until one day you look down and realize you are standing on a cliff with nothing beneath your heels but air. The silence in the dining room at Crestview Ridge was not new. It was the same silence I had lived in for 30 years. It was the silence of a debt being called in that no one had the currency to pay. To understand why I put that envelope on the table, you have to understand that I did not wake up that morning and decide to be cruel. I woke up and decided to be a person. It started with the word easy when I was 10 years old and Delia was 7. Our birthdays fell within the same week. My mother, overwhelmed with the social calendar of the church and her own vague anxieties, decided it was only logical to combine the parties. I remember the living room filled with balloons. I remember the clown who smelled like cigarettes and old grease. And I remember the cake. It was a sheet cake from the grocery store, the kind with the neon frosting that stains your teeth for days. In bright pink cursive, it read, "Happy birthday, Delia." There was no and Ulissa. I stood there, staring at the wax candles melting into the frosting, feeling a heat rise in my chest that I didn't have a name for yet. I tugged on my mother's sleeve. I whispered that my name wasn't there. My mother didn't kneel down to comfort me. She didn't apologize. She looked at me with a tight, stressed smile and squeezed my shoulder hard enough to bruise. The decorator ran out of room. "Honey," she said, her voice pitched high for the other mothers to hear. "Don't make a fuss. Be easy, Ulissa. You know your sister gets upset if things aren't perfect. Be easy." It became my instruction manual. To be easy meant to be low maintenance. To be easy meant to accept the smaller half of the cookie so Delia wouldn't cry. To be easy meant to be invisible, over the years. Easy morphed into a different word entirely, though no one said it aloud. It morphed into servant. By the time we reached high school, the roles were cast in iron. I was the academic tank. Delia was the fragile flower. I spent my nights at the kitchen table, surrounded by SAT prep books and AP history notes. The hum of the refrigerator, my only company. Delia spent her nights in front of a mirror, practicing angles for a social media career that didn't exist yet. When I won the state merit scholarship, I came home waving the letter, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a full ride. It was validation. My father sat in his recliner, reading the paper. He took the letter, scanned it, and nodded. "Good," he said. "That is good. Ulissa." Then he turned to my mother, who was folding laundry on the sofa. "That saves us the tuition money," he said. "We can use that for Delia's application fees and that private tutor she needs for the math section, the one who charges $80 an hour. You see," my mother said to me, smiling as if I had just volunteered a kidney, "it all works out. You can take care of yourself, Ulissa. You always could." They didn't see my achievement. They saw a budget adjustment. They saw a resource they could reallocate to the project that was Delia. It was the weather of our lives, constant, pervasive, and undeniable. Prom night was the next eroded inch. Delia, a sophomore when I was a senior, needed a dress, not just a dress, but the dress a shimmering emerald thing that cost $400. My parents sat me down at the kitchen island. "We are a little tight this month," my father said, looking at his hands. "The transmission on the van, you know." "Ulissa," my mother added, "you are so clever with a sewing machine, and you aren't really the sparkly type, are you? That dress in your closet from the winter formal, couldn't you hem it?" I wore the old dress. I spent the night pulling at a loose thread on the hem, watching Delia spin in the center of the dance floor in her $400 gown, radiating the confidence of someone who has never been told no. When the photos came back, my parents framed a solo shot of Delia on the mantelpiece. I was in the background of another photo, blurry, holding her purse. "It is just practical," they told me. "Delia needs the boost. You have the grades. She has the presentation." I went to college. I graduated early to save money on housing. I got a job at Vanguard Meridian Integrity Office. My family called it the paper-pushing place. They didn't understand what I did. They didn't care to know that I spent my days analyzing high-risk insurance claims, detecting fraud, and tracing assets that people tried desperately to hide. I was good at it because I had been trained to spot inconsistencies my whole life. I knew what a lie looked like. I knew that a missing number was often louder than a written one. Delia, meanwhile, became a creative director. This was her term for posting videos of her outfits and lifestyle hacks on the internet. She didn't have a job. She had a persona. And personas are expensive to maintain. That was when the Venmo requests started. They never came with a conversation. They just appeared on my phone screen. Little dings of demand. Delia requested $50 for coffee and content. Delia requested $120 for emergency tires. Delia requested $300 for hosting setup, if I ignored them. The texts would start. First from her, "Hey sis, did you see the app kinda stranded here?" Then from Mom, "Help your sister, Ulissa. She is trying so hard to get this business off the ground. You have that salary and no kids. What do you have to spend it on?" "What do you have to spend it on?" That was the refrain. Because I lived in a modest apartment, drove a used sedan, and wore clothes that didn't scream for attention. They assumed my money was stagnant water waiting to be piped into their garden. They didn't see my savings account. They didn't see the IRA I was maxing out. They saw a surplus that belonged to the family collective. And then there was Benjamin. Benjamin Fairford was the first person who looked at me and didn't see a utility. He was a structural engineer, a man who understood load-bearing walls and breaking points, when I brought him home for the first time. Delia made a joke about his flannel shirt, and my father asked him to look at the garage door opener before we had even finished appetizers. We got married at the courthouse. I wanted it small. I wanted it to be ours. But my mother insisted on a celebration dinner afterwards. I paid for it. Of course, Delia wore white, a white lace cocktail dress. When a guest pointed it out, Delia laughed, tossing her hair. "Oh, it is cream, not white. Besides, Ulissa doesn't care about tradition. She is so modern." They took photos. They posted them online with captions about family love and blessed days. But once the camera was down, the dynamic shifted back to its factory settings. Benjamin became the family handyman. If their sink leaked, they called Ben. If they needed to move a sofa, they called Ben. If the Wi-Fi went down, they called Ben. They never asked how his day was. They never asked about his projects. They greeted him with a to-do list. One evening, about 2 years into our marriage, we were at my parents' house for a barbecue. Delia was holding court on the patio, complaining about the algorithm suppressing her reach. I was in the kitchen, washing the dishes from a meal I had cooked. Delia walked in, holding her phone up, live streaming to her 6,000 followers. "And here is the big sister," she chirped, shoving the camera in my face. "Always at the sink. She is so responsible. You guys, it is annoying. I tell her to live a little, but she is obsessed with being the boring one. Someone has to balance out my chaos, right?" She laughed. My mother, chopping fruit nearby, laughed too. "Ulissa loves to work," Mom said to the camera. "She is our little worker bee." I froze. My hands were deep in soapy water. I wanted to smash the ceramic plate I was holding, but I didn't. I washed it, dried it, and put it away. I swallowed the rage. I made it easy. Benjamin was the one who saw the crack in the foundation before I did. It happened on a Tuesday night. I was going through my mail and found a letter from a credit card company I didn't use. It was a statement for a card I didn't remember opening. The balance was $4,000. The charges were all for high-end baby furniture and camera equipment. My stomach dropped. I logged into the credit monitoring service I used for work. There it was. An account opened 6 months ago, using my maiden name and my parents' address. I drove to my parents' house immediately. I was shaking. I put the statement on the table in front of my mother. "What is this?" I asked. My mother didn't look up from her knitting. "Oh, it must be a mix-up. I saw some mail come in for you a while back. I probably put it in the wrong pile." "Mom," I said, my voice trembling. "This is a credit card, in my name, with $4,000 of debt on it. The charges are for things Delia has in her room right now." My mother finally looked at me. Her eyes were hard, devoid of the warmth she saved for the camera. "Ulissa," she said, "your sister needed a bridge loan. Her credit is recovering. We were going to pay it off before you noticed. It is not a big deal." "Not a big deal," I shouted. "This is fraud. This is identity theft." "Lower your voice," my mother hissed. "Do not use those words. We are family. We help each other. If you make a fuss about this, if you report it, you will ruin your sister's reputation. Is that what you want? To send your sister to jail over a few $1,000s you can easily afford." "I didn't authorize this," I said. "We authorized it," she said, as if that settled the matter. "Because we knew you would say yes if you weren't so stingy. We just skipped the argument. Now, be a good sister and pay the bill. We will pay you back when Delia's channel takes off." I stood there, realizing that in their eyes, I wasn't a separate human being. I was an extension of their wallet. I was a resource to be mined. I paid the bill. I closed the account. I didn't call the police. I told myself it was the last time. I told myself I was keeping the peace. When I got home, Benjamin was waiting for me. I told him what happened. sobbing into his shoulder. I expected him to be angry at them. I expected him to yell. Instead, he held me at arm's length and looked me in the eye. "Ulissa," he said quietly, "do you realize they don't ask you for things? They ask all the time." I sniffed. "The Venmos." "No," Ben said. "Asking implies you have the right to say no. They don't ask. They assign. They assign you debts. They assign you chores. They assign you the role of the safety net, so Delia can play trapeze artist." He paused, and his next words hit me harder than the credit card statement. "They don't love you, Liz. They love what you provide. There is a difference." That was the moment the weather changed. That was the moment the erosion stopped being a natural phenomenon and started being a crime scene. I began to look at my life through the lens of my profession. I stopped being the daughter and started being the auditor. I looked at the family hub house they wanted me to buy. I looked at the endless emergencies that only money could fix. I looked at the way Delia looked at me not with affection, but with the calculation of a butcher eyeing a side of beef. I realized I had spent 30 years trying to buy my way into their hearts, thinking that if I just gave enough, if I was easy enough, they would finally see me. But you cannot buy what is not for sale, and you cannot fill a cup that has no bottom. So, when Delia stood up at Thanksgiving and announced her triplets, when she handed me those keys with the entitlement of a queen demanding taxes from a peasant, I didn't feel the old panic. I didn't feel the urge to smooth it over. I felt the cold, hard clarity of a final balance sheet. I had been the weather. I had rained money. I had sheltered them from the wind. I had been the solid ground they walked on. But seasons change, and winter was coming. To understand the envelope I placed on the Thanksgiving table, you have to understand the architecture of the trap. It was not built with steel or iron. It was built with guilt, silence, and the soft, suffocating weight of duty. The trap was laid exactly 2 years ago. It began with a phone call from my mother at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in a meeting reviewing a fraud case involving a shell company in the Cayman Islands, but when I saw her name on the screen, my stomach did that familiar somersault. Mother never called during work hours unless someone was dying or someone was being sued. "It is your father," she said, her voice tight and trembling. "His heart. The doctors say it is angina. Maybe worse. Stress. Ulissa. It is all stress." I left work early. I drove to the rental house they were living in at the time. A cramped split level that smelled of mildew and dog hair. Delia was there, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone while tears streamed down her perfectly contoured face. "My landlord is raising the rent again," Delia sobbed as soon as I walked in. $300 a month. I can't afford it. Liz, I'm going to be homeless. And now Dad." My father was sitting in his armchair, looking gray and defeated. He wasn't dying, but he was worn out. He looked like a man who had been treading water for 40 years and was finally too tired to kick. "We had a thought," my mother said, wiping her eyes. "A family meeting. We need to consolidate. For your father's health, for Delia's safety." The proposal was simple, or so they claimed. We would buy a house, a family hub, a place big enough for my parents and Delia, a place where the mortgage would be fixed, unlike rent, a place where they could be safe. "We just need a little help with the logistics," my father said, refusing to look me in the eye. Benjamin and I sat on the folding chairs in their living room, our knees touching. I could feel the tension radiating off him. We had our own plans. We were saving for a place in the city. Something small but ours. "We can't carry a mortgage on a house that size," Benjamin said, his voice reasonable. "Not with our current savings goals." "Oh, we will pay the mortgage," my mother insisted, waving her hand as if dismissing a fly. "We just need someone to facilitate. Our credit took a hit after the medical bills in 2008. We just need a name on the paper to get the good interest rate, the Tier 1 rate." I hesitated. I knew, professionally and personally, that co-signing or buying for family was the first chapter in every financial tragedy I had ever audited. But then my father pulled me into the kitchen under the pretense of making tea. He grabbed my hand. His grip was weak, shaking. "Mama is scared." "Liz," he whispered. "She doesn't sleep. And Delia, you know how she is. She is not like you. She can't survive the world like you can. If I go, who catches them?" He looked at me with watery eyes. "I just want to know they are safe before I die." It was a weaponized sentence. It bypassed my brain and went straight to the part of me that was still the 10-year-old girl wanting to see her name on the cake. "Okay," I said. "Okay." I put down the down payment, $40,000. It was nearly everything I had saved since I started working. I paid the closing costs. I paid the inspection fees. At the closing table, the title agent looked at the paperwork. "So, all 4 names on the deed?" "No," my mother said quickly. "Just Ulissa. For the financing. We don't want to complicate the underwriting with our history. Keep it simple. We will just pay Ulissa the monthly amount." "I want a lease," I said, my pen hovering over the signature line. "A formal rental agreement between us, so everything is documented." "Of course, honey," my mother said, smiling that beatific smile. "Write whatever you want. We are family. We don't need paper to know we love each other. But if it makes you feel better..." "Sure." I signed. I bought the house at Crestview Ridge, a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage and a manicured lawn. The first 3 months were fine. They sent me checks. The checks cleared. Then came the 4th month. Delia needed new tires. The check was short. "Just this once," my mother texted. "We will make it up next month." The 6th month. The water heater broke. "Since it is technically your house," my father said on the phone, sounding embarrassed, "shouldn't the landlord cover repairs? We are a bit tight." By the end of the first year, the payments had stopped being checks and started being sporadic Venmo transfers of random amounts, 200 here, 50 there, labeled with emojis of houses and hearts. I absorbed the mortgage, $2,800 a month. I put it on autopay. It was easier than begging, every month. The money left my account, and I sat in my 600-square-foot apartment in Greyhaven, listening to my neighbors argue through the paper-thin walls, while my sister lived in a 4-bedroom estate on my dime. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the show. Delia turned the house into a studio. She filmed morning routine videos in the kitchen I paid for, showcasing the granite countertops. She filmed garden tours in the backyard I paid to landscape. I would sit at my desk at Vanguard Meridian, eating a cold sandwich, and watch her live streams. "Welcome back to my sanctuary," she would chirp, spinning around the living room. "I worked so hard to get this place. It is so important to have a space that reflects your energy. You know, this is my home, my achievement." In the comments, people would write, "You are so inspiring." Delia. A homeowner at 26 goals. And then, the donation links would drop. "Help me decorate the future nursery, send stars." She was monetizing the lie, and I was the silent producer. Benjamin tried to intervene. "You have to evict them, Ulissa, or sell it. This is bleeding us dry." "I can't," I would say, looking at the photos of my father sitting on the porch, looking peaceful. "Dad is happy there. His heart is better. If I sell, where do they go?" "They go to reality," Benjamin said, "which is where the rest of us live." I couldn't do it. Not yet. I was still waiting for them to wake up and thank me. I was still waiting for the weather to clear on its own. Then came the envelope that changed everything. It was 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. Benjamin had gone down to the mailroom of our apartment complex. He came back up holding a letter from a bank I did not bank with. "Liz," he said, his voice serious. "This came for you. It was sent to our address, not the Crestview address. That is the only reason you are seeing it." I opened it. It was a notice of incomplete application. "Dear Ms. Winmere, regarding your application for a home equity line of credit HELOC on the property at Crestview Ridge, we require further verification of income." I froze. A HELOC. Someone was trying to borrow money against the equity of the house, my house. "I didn't apply for this," I said. the paper shaking in my hand. I know, Benjamin said. Look at the second page. I flipped it over. There was a photocopy of the application form. At the bottom was a signature. Ulissa Winmere. It was a good forgery. It had the loops of my U and the sharp cross of my T. But the slant was wrong. It leaned to the left. My handwriting leans to the right. Delia's handwriting leans to the left. The amount requested was $50,000. The stated purpose, home improvement/nursery addition. I felt a coldness spread from my chest to my fingertips. This wasn't just mooching. This was a felony. This was my sister and my mother because Delia couldn't navigate a loan application without Mom trying to mortgage my financial future to build a set for a YouTube channel. I drove to the house the next day. I didn't call first. When I walked in, they were eating lunch. Delia was laughing at something on her phone. My mother was serving salad. Ulissa, my mother said, surprised. We weren't expecting you. Is everything okay? I didn't say hello. I slapped the bank letter onto the dining table. It landed between the salad bowl and the salt shaker. Who signed this? I asked. My voice was very quiet. Delia glanced at the paper. I saw the micro-expression, the wideness of the eyes, the quick dart of the pupil toward Mom before the mask slammed down. What is that? Delia asked, picking up a fork. Some junk mail. It is a loan application, I said, for $50,000, against this house, with my name forged on the bottom. My mother picked up the letter. She put on her reading glasses. She took a long time to read it. Well, she said finally, taking off her glasses, I don't know anything about this. Must be fraud. You know, hackers. They are everywhere these days. Hackers don't mail applications from the local branch, I said. And hackers don't ask for money to build a nursery in a house they don't live in. I looked at Delia. Did you do this? Me, Delia gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. How dare you? You think I would steal from you after everything we have been through. I am your sister. This is insulting. I am shaking. Mom, look, I am shaking. She held out her hand. It was trembling. It was a perfect performance. Ulissa, my mother said sternly, apologize to your sister. She is pregnant. She doesn't need this stress. Obviously, it was a mistake. Maybe the bank made an error. Maybe you signed something and forgot. I forgot signing for $50,000. I asked. You are busy. Mom shrugged. You work so much. Sometimes you lose track. The point is, it didn't go through, right? The bank caught it, so no harm done. Why are you making a mountain out of a molehill? Attempted fraud is not a molehill, I said. It is only fraud if you press charges, my mother said. Her voice dropped an octave. It was a threat. And you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't put your pregnant sister through a legal battle over a piece of paper that means nothing. Would you? I looked at them. I looked at my father, who was staring intently at his salad, pretending he was invisible. He knew. They all knew. They didn't see a crime. They saw a resource that had temporarily malfunctioned. They believed so thoroughly in their right to my existence that they felt entitled to sign my name. You are right, I said. I won't press charges. Delia let out a breath she had been holding. A smug little smile touched the corners of her mouth. Good. I am glad you are being reasonable. Now, do you want some salad? No, I said. I have to go. I walked out of the house. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing. They thought I had folded. They thought I had accepted the weather again. They thought that because I didn't scream, I had agreed to stay in the storm, but they were wrong. I picked up my phone. I called Maribel Dane, my mother's second cousin who used to work in escrow. Maribel, I said, I need to know exactly how to list a house for sale when there are squatters inside who think they are owners. Are you safe? Maribel asked. I am fine, I said, but I am done being the roof. I started the car. I didn't go back to work. I went to a real estate office in the Lake Briar district. I had spent 2 years paying for a family hub that was actually a collar around my neck. It was time to take it off. If they liked the house so much, they could have it, but they would have to buy it. And since they had spent 2 years proving they couldn't afford a tire change, I knew exactly how that story would end. I drove home to Benjamin. "Did you do it?" he asked. "No," I said. "I didn't evict them today." "Why not?" "Because Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks," I said. "And if they want a show, I am going to give them the season finale." I pulled up the bank app on my phone and canceled the auto pay for the Crestview mortgage. It was the first time in my life I had ever missed a payment on purpose. It felt terrifying. It felt like jumping off a cliff. But for the first time, I wasn't jumping alone. I was jumping away from them. The house was not a home. It was leverage, and I was finally ready to use it. Revenge is often depicted as a hot, screaming thing. It is a glass thrown against a wall or a tire slashed in the dark, but in my line of work, I know that real destruction, the kind that leaves no room for rebuilding, is quiet. It is paper. It is ink. It is a signature on a line that cannot be erased. The morning after I found the forged loan application, Benjamin and I did not go to the police station. We went to a diner on the edge of town to meet Maribel Dane. Maribel was my mother's second cousin, a woman who had spent 40 years working in real estate administration and escrow. She was 60 years old, wore rimless glasses, and treated small talk like a waste of billable hours. She was the only member of my extended family who had never asked me for a loan. We sat in a booth with vinyl seats that were cracked from years of use. I laid everything out on the table: the deed to the Crestview house, the mortgage statements, the forged application, the printouts of Delia's text messages asking for money. Maribel read through them while eating a piece of dry toast. She didn't gasp. She didn't look shocked. She just adjusted her glasses and looked at the date on the deed. "You own the asset," Maribel said. It was a statement of fact, not a question. "I do," I said. "But they act like they own it." "Possession is 9/10 of the law in the mind of a squatter," Maribel said. "But in a court, the deed is 10/10. She looked at me over the rim of her coffee mug. Her eyes were gray and unblinking. "So," she said, "what is the goal here? Ulissa, do you want justice, or do you want freedom?" I looked at Benjamin. He was holding my hand under the table, his thumb tracing the knuckles. I thought about justice. Justice would mean calling the police on my sister for forgery. It would mean a trial. It would mean my parents weeping in a courtroom, painting me as the villain who put a pregnant woman behind bars. It would be a war that lasted years. "I want freedom," I said. "I want to be untethered." "Then you don't need a lawyer to sue them," Maribel said. "You need a lawyer to close a sale, and you need a paper trail that looks like a highway." Maribel pulled a notepad from her purse and uncapped a pen. "First," she said, "we stop the bleeding. You say you stopped the mortgage autopay. Good. Now lock the doors to your financial house." That afternoon, Benjamin took the lead on the digital fortress. We sat in our living room with laptops open. For years, I had operated under the assumption that family was a safe zone. My passwords were variations of childhood pets and birthdays, information my sister knew. My security questions were answers my mother had taught me. "We are changing everything," Benjamin said. "New email for financial alerts, 2-factor authentication on everything, routed to my phone. Not yours, just in case they try to social engineer the phone company." We went through my accounts one by one. I requested credit freezes with all 3 major bureaus. I set up alerts for any transaction over 1 cent. It felt paranoid, and then it felt like taking off a tight corset. I realized I had been holding my breath for a decade, waiting for the next hit. "Liz," Benjamin said, pausing at his screen, "you need to see this." He was looking at the transaction history of a PayPal account I had set up years ago to send money to my parents easily. I rarely checked the incoming activity, only the outgoing. "What is it?" "I was tracing the nursery fund link Delia posted on her Facebook yesterday," Benjamin said. "She linked it to a new email address, but the recovery phone number is Dad's." I leaned in. We followed the digital breadcrumbs. It wasn't high-level hacking. It was just looking at public Venmo feeds and cross-referencing timestamps. We found a pattern. Every month, on the 1st, my father sent Delia $600. The memo line always said, house payment. Every month. On the 2nd, Delia transferred that money out to her personal checking account. And every month, on the 3rd, Delia posted a video lamenting how tight money was and how she was holding it down for the family. They think they are paying the mortgage, I whispered. Dad is sending her money to give to me. He thinks he is contributing. And she is keeping it, Benjamin said. She is taking money from them, telling them it is for the house, and then telling you they can't afford to pay. I felt a wave of nausea. It was double-dipping. She was robbing me of the mortgage payment, and she was robbing my parents of their pension, all while letting me believe they were destitute and letting them believe I was handling it. And then, there was Tanner. We found a transaction from Tanner to Delia labeled, my half of the mortgage plus utility. It was for $1,200. Tanner is paying rent, I said, my voice flat. He thinks he is paying rent to me through her. Delia was collecting nearly $2,000 a month from the people living in that house, allegedly for the mortgage, and pocketing every cent while I paid the bank $2,800 from my own salary. She wasn't just a squatter. She was a landlord who didn't own the building. Print it, I said. Print it all. The stack of paper grew. It was no longer just a dispute. It was an indictment. The next step was the physical exit. Maribel had given me the name of a realtor in the Lake Briar district, a quiet area on the other side of the city. It was a neighborhood of brick townhouses and old oak trees, far from the manicured, content-ready aesthetic of Crestview Ridge. We went to see a townhouse on a rainy Thursday. It was an end unit. It had hardwood floors that creaked slightly and a small enclosed patio that looked out onto a dense line of trees. It is small, the realtor said apologetically. 2 bedrooms, no open-concept kitchen. I love it, I said. I stood in the center of the living room. It was silent. There was no echo of my mother's criticism. There was no phantom noise of Delia's ring light buzzing. It felt solid. It felt like a fortress. We will take it, I said. We can close in 10 days if we rush. We will rush, Benjamin said. We signed the papers for the new house in a small conference room. I used my own money I had hidden in a separate high-yield savings account that my family didn't know existed. Buying this house felt different than buying the Crestview house. That one had felt like an obligation. This one felt like an exhale. Now came the hard part, listing the Crestview house. I met with a listing agent named Sarah, a woman recommended by Maribel for her discretion. I need to list the property at Crestview Ridge, I told her, but I cannot have a sign in the yard. Not yet. Sarah raised an eyebrow. A pocket listing that limits your buyer pool. I don't need a bidding war, I said. I need a buyer who wants a quick close, and I need the tenants my family not to know until the last possible second. Sarah nodded slowly. I have investors, people who buy for rental portfolios. They don't need to see the house 20 times. They look at the numbers. If the numbers work, they buy. The numbers work, I said. I am pricing it to move. I signed the listing agreement. The house was now effectively on the market. The clock was ticking. Maribel had given me one final, crucial instruction. The notice, she had said, tapping her finger on the table. You cannot just tell them to leave. That is hearsay. You need to send a formal notice to quit, and you need to send it certified mail. Return receipt requested. They will see it, I had argued. They live there. It doesn't matter if they see it, Maribel said. It matters that a postman swears they saw it. It matters that you have a green card with a signature on it. That card is your shield. I drafted the letter. It was dry, legal, and devoid of emotion. To the occupants of address, notice is hereby given that your tenancy at will is terminated. You are required to vacate the premises by date, 30 days from Thanksgiving. The property has been listed for sale. I didn't mail it immediately. I held on to it. The timing had to be precise. I wanted them to receive the official notice the day after Thanksgiving, but I wanted them to receive the truth on Thanksgiving. The days leading up to the holiday were a blur of logistics. I packed my apartment in secret. We moved boxes to the new townhouse at night, leaving the apartment looking lived in just in case my mother dropped by. I received texts from Delia. Can't wait for Thursday. The triplets are kicking. I think LOL Mom is making your favorite stuffing. Don't be late, I replied with simple thumbs up emojis. I didn't trust myself to use words. I kept thinking about the nursery fund. I kept thinking about my father's tired face as he transferred money he probably needed for medicine, thinking he was securing his home. I kept thinking about Tanner, working whatever gig he had, paying his share to a woman who was likely spending it on baby clothes for a nursery that would never exist in that house. I wasn't just evicting them. I was exposing a Ponzi scheme where the currency was emotional manipulation. On the morning of Thanksgiving, I sat at my kitchen table in the empty apartment. The decoy pie, was cooling on the counter. I took the thick manila envelope. Into it, I placed the photocopy of the deed. I placed the printout of the mortgage balance. I placed the timeline of payments I had made. I placed the voided check showing the deposit for the Lake Briar townhouse. And then, I placed the transaction logs, the ones showing the money flowing from Dad and Tanner to Delia, and stopping there. I sealed the envelope. I didn't lick the seal. I used a strip of heavy-duty tape. I wanted it to be hard to open. I wanted the sound of the ripping paper to be audible in the silence of the dining room. I looked at myself in the mirror. I wore a simple black dress. I looked severe. I looked like the bad guy. "Don't make a fuss," I whispered to my reflection. Then I shook my head. "No," I said aloud. "Make a fuss. Make the biggest fuss they have ever seen." I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy, like a brick. I wasn't going to Crestview Ridge to eat turkey. I wasn't going to celebrate a pregnancy. I was going to perform an autopsy on a marriage of convenience between my family and my wallet. I walked out the door and locked it for the last time. The drive to Crestview Ridge was quiet. I didn't listen to music. I listened to the sound of the tires on the pavement. A steady, rhythmic drumbeat, carrying me toward the end of the world as they knew it. The plan was not to scream. The plan was to place the truth on the table and let gravity do the rest. I pulled up to the house. I saw the cars. I saw the lights on in the windows. It looked warm. It looked inviting. It looked like a lie. I took a deep breath, grabbed the pie in one hand and the envelope in the other. It was time to serve dinner. The silence that followed my declaration was not empty. It was heavy. It was a physical weight that pressed down on the roast turkey, the green bean casserole, and the shoulders of every person in the room. The air had been sucked out of the dining room, leaving a vacuum where only the hum of the refrigerator dared to exist. Delia was the first to move. She laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound, like glass stepping on stone. "You are so funny. Ulissa," she said, her eyes darting to the camera phones that were still held aloft by her friends. "She has such a dry sense of humor. She loves to joke about legal things." "I am not joking," I said. My voice was level. I did not raise it. I did not need to. The envelope on the table was shouting for me. My mother stood up. Her face was flushed a blotchy red, clashing with her pristine apron. "Ulissa, stop this right now. Sit down. Eat your turkey. Today is a day for gratitude. Not for whatever this tantrum is. You are ruining your sister's moment. She is pregnant, for heaven's sake." "I am sitting," I said, "and I am grateful. I am grateful for the truth." "Talk about this later," my father mumbled, staring at his plate. "Please, Liz, not in front of company." "No," I said. "We talk about it now, because the company is part of the lie. You invited them here to witness a purchase. They should witness the receipt." I looked across the table. Sitting near the end, next to the church ladies, was Maribel Dane. She had been eating quietly, observing the circus with the detached interest of a biologist watching bacteria. "Maribel," I said. Maribel looked up. She dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "You worked in escrow for 30 years," I said. "You know how to read a closing statement. You know what a deed looks like. I do, Maribel said. Her voice was raspy, dry as autumn leaves. I slid the thick manila envelope across the tablecloth. It spun slowly and stopped right in front of her plate. Would you mind? I asked. I want to make sure there is no confusion. I want an independent party to verify the ownership of the property at 124 Oak Street. Ulissa! Don't you dare! My mother shrieked. She reached for the envelope, but Maribel was faster. Her hand, gnarled with arthritis but quick, clamped down on the paper. I will read it, Maribel said. She looked at my mother. If it is all a joke, Delilah, then the paper will say so. Paper doesn't blush. Maribel tore open the seal I had taped shut that morning. The sound was a loud, violent rip in the quiet room. She pulled out the stack of documents. She adjusted her rimless glasses. Document 1, Maribel announced. She sounded like she was in a deposition. Grant deed, dated November 15th, 2023. Grantor Crestview Developers. Grantee Ulissa Winmere. A single woman. She looked up over her glasses. There are no other names on the title. Not Delia Marrow, not Tanner Sloan, not Trent or Delilah Winmere. Just Ulissa. A murmur went through the room. The influencers lowered their phones slightly, sensing the vibe had shifted from heartwarming viral moment to public train wreck. Document 2, Maribel continued, flipping the page. Mortgage statement, current, borrower, Ulissa Winmere, principal balance $340,000, payment history current, all payments made via electronic transfer from an account ending in 4099. Maribel paused. That is your account, Ulissa. It is, I said. And finally, Maribel said, pulling out a spreadsheet I had color-coded, a summary of contributions. Total equity paid by Ulissa Winmere $62,000. Total equity paid by occupants $0. Maribel placed the papers down. She took a sip of her water. The conclusion is clear. This house belongs to Ulissa Winmere. The people living here are guests who apparently believe they are landlords. Delia slammed her hands on the table. The silverware rattled. The mask of the sweet, glowing mother-to-be cracked, revealing the snarling creature beneath. This is technicality, she screamed. It is just paper. We agreed Mom said it was for the family. You can't just wave a piece of paper and pretend you are the boss of us. Ownership is not a technicality. Delia, I said. It is the law. I am pregnant with triplets, Delia yelled. She gestured to her stomach. You are going to kick out 3 babies. You are going to throw your own nieces and nephews onto the street. You are a monster, a cold, heartless, barren monster. The insults bounced off me. Years ago, they would have pierced the skin, but I was wearing armor now. I was wearing the truth. I am not evicting anyone, I said calmly. An eviction is a legal process for tenants. You are not tenants. You are family members who have overstayed your welcome, and I am not kicking you out today. I am giving you notice that the free ride has reached its terminal station. You promised, my mother cried, tears streaming down her face again, but these were not the happy tears from earlier. These were the weaponized tears of a manipulator losing control. You said you would help us. You said you would take care of us. I did, I said. I bought you a house. I paid for it for 2 years. I let you pretend it was yours. I let you film in it. I let you boast about it. I helped you. But help has a limit, and you found it when you tried to forge my signature on a bank loan. The room gasped. Genuine shock this time. Mrs. Gable covered her mouth. That is a lie, Delia shouted, her eyes wide. I never did that. I have the rejection letter, I said. And the handwriting analysis is pending. Do you want to go there? Delia, do you want to add felony fraud to the agenda of this dinner? Delia shut her mouth. Her chest was heaving. She looked trapped. Then, the second shoe dropped. Tanner Sloan, who had been sitting in stunned silence, slowly stood up. He looked at the papers Maribel had spread out. He looked at me. Then he turned his head slowly, robotically, to look at Delia. "Delia," Tanner said. His voice was confused, like a man waking up from a coma. "Not now." "Tanner," Delia hissed. "She is lying. We will talk later." "Delia," Tanner said, louder this time. "The lady said the occupants paid $0. It is just accounting tricks." "Tanner," Delia snapped. "Ulissa is an accountant. She twists numbers." "I sent you money," Tanner said. "Every month, on the first, $1,200. You said it was for the mortgage. You said it was my half. You said you sent it to the bank." The room went dead silent again. This was the twist no one saw coming, not even me, until I found the records. "And Dad?" Tanner said, looking at my father. "I saw Dad write you checks. I saw him transfer money for the house fund." Delia's face went pale. It was the color of old ash. "Where is the money?" "Delia," Tanner asked. Delia stammered. "I saved it for the nursery, for the babies I was managing it. It costs money to run a household." "Tanner, you think groceries are free? You think the electricity is free?" "I pay the electricity," I cut in. "I pay the water. I pay the gas. I pay the HOA fees. All of it is on auto pay from my account." I looked at Tanner. "She didn't use your money for the house, Tanner, and she didn't save it. I checked the account she uses. It is gone. Sephora, Nordstrom, Delta Airlines, and a lot of promotional boosting for her channel." Tanner looked as if I had punched him in the stomach. He slumped back into his chair. He looked at Delia with horror. He wasn't looking at his fiancée anymore. He was looking at a stranger who had been pickpocketing him while he slept. "You stole from me," Tanner whispered. "I worked double shifts at the warehouse. I sold my truck. You said we were building equity." "I did it for us," Delia shrieked, her voice cracking. "I needed to look the part. You can't be an influencer in rags. Tanner, I was building a brand. The brand was going to pay us back 10 times over. It was an investment." My mother turned to my father. She grabbed his arm. "Trent, do something. Stop them." My father looked up. He looked old. He looked tired. He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw shame in his eyes. "You knew," I said to him. "Didn't you, Dad? You knew you were sending her money. You knew I was paying the mortgage. You just hoped the math would never meet in the middle." My father swallowed. "I asked your mother. She said she was handling it. She said Delia needed a little float. I didn't ask questions. Liz, I just wanted peace." "You wanted peace," I repeated. "So you let me pay for the war." I stood up. I smoothed down my dress. "The house is listed," I announced. "The listing went live 10 minutes ago. It is priced for investors. It will sell quickly." "You can't sell it with us in it," my mother cried. "I can," I said. "And I will. I sent you a formal notice to quit via certified mail. It will arrive tomorrow. You have 30 days to vacate. That is the legal requirement. I am following the law to the letter." 30 days, Delia gasped. "I am due in 4 months. Where do we go?" "You have the money Tanner gave you, don't you?" I asked, knowing the answer. "Oh, wait. You spent it. Well, perhaps you can stay with one of these lovely friends." I gestured to the influencers. They immediately looked away, suddenly finding their cuticles fascinating. No one wanted the drama when the camera was off. "I am moving out tomorrow," I said. "My movers are coming at 8 in the morning to take my personal property. The furniture I bought, the appliances I paid for, everything else is yours to pack." "You are leaving us," my mother whispered. "Just like that." "I am not leaving you," I said. "I am returning to my own life, a life where I am not an ATM machine with a pulse." I picked up my purse. I looked at the table, at the ruined dinner, at the shattered illusion of the happy family. "Enjoy the turkey," I said. "I paid for that too." I turned to walk away. Ulissa. It was Delia. She had stood up. She was holding her phone. Her eyes were dry now. The tears were gone. In their place was a cold, hard malice that matched the winter wind outside. She held the phone up, pointing the camera lens directly at my face. The red light was blinking. She was live. "Go ahead," Delia said, her voice shaking with rage. "Walk away. Abandon your pregnant sister. Abandon your dying father. But remember this." She took a step toward me. "I have 100,000 followers across my platforms, and they listen to me. They love me. They don't know about deeds and mortgages. They only know what I tell them." She smiled. It was a terrifying, shark-like smile. "If you want to play the legal game, fine. I will play the public opinion game. By tomorrow morning, you won't just be the sister who sold the house. You will be the villain of the internet. I will ruin your reputation. I will ruin your job. I will make sure you can't walk down the street without someone spitting on you." "If you want to play like that," Delia hissed, "I will make you famous." I stopped. I looked at the lens. I looked at her. "Do it," I said, and I walked out the door. The morning after Thanksgiving did not begin with a hangover. It began with the sound of packing tape ripping against cardboard. It was a sharp, decisive sound. It was the sound of a life being sealed up and shipped out. I stood in the center of my apartment in Greyhaven for the last time. The space was mostly empty. The walls, which had witnessed 3 years of my solitude and my saving, were bare. Benjamin was by the door, directing 2 of his college friends who had volunteered to help us move. There were no professional movers. There was no fanfare. We were moving like fugitives, quick and quiet, before the smoke from the bridge I had burned the night before could choke us. My phone was vibrating on the kitchen counter. It had been vibrating since 6 in the morning. I walked over and looked at the screen. It was a digital seizure of notifications. 32 missed calls from Mom, 12 text messages from Dad, and a stream of voice notes from Delia. I picked up the phone. I did not unlock it to reply. I just looked at the preview of the chaos I had unleashed. My mother's texts were a masterclass in guilt. "Ulissa, pick up. Your father is having chest pains. Ulissa, how could you leave us like this, Ulissa? We are family. Families fight, but they do not foreclose." My father's texts were shorter, weaker. "Please, Liz, just talk to us. Don't do this. Be reasonable." And then there was Delia. I tapped on one of the voice notes. The volume was low, but her voice cut through the empty apartment like a siren. "You think you are so smart," Delia's voice hissed, distorted by what sounded like wind or bad reception. "You think because you have a piece of paper you win, you are going to lose everything. Nobody likes a greedy sister. I am going to tell them you hit me. I will tell them you pushed a pregnant woman. I will—" The voice note shifted mid-sentence, her tone breaking into a sob that sounded performative even through the speaker. "Liz, please, I am scared. The babies. Just give us 6 months. Please." I pressed the delete button. I didn't listen to the rest. I deleted the next one, and the one after that. I didn't need to hear the cycle of abuse replay itself in real time. I knew the script: abuse, guilt, bargaining, threat, abuse, guilt, bargaining, threat. It was a wheel that had been turning for 30 years. I was simply stepping off the rim. "Ready?" Benjamin asked. He was standing in the doorway, holding a box labeled Kitchen/Fragile. "Ready," I said. We drove to the townhouse in Lake Briar District. It was raining, a coldly gray drizzle that washed the streets clean. The drive took 40 minutes. With every mile that put distance between me and Crestview Ridge, I felt my lungs expand. The new house was cold when we walked in. It smelled of paint and sawdust. It was smaller than the family hub, but it had something that mansion never had. It had integrity. We spent the morning unloading. Benjamin's friends, Mike and Sarah, were efficient. They didn't ask questions about why I was checking my rearview mirror or why I had insisted on unlisted addresses. They just carried boxes. By noon, the major furniture was in. Mike and Sarah left with a thank you pizza and a promise of beer later. Benjamin and I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by towers of cardboard. "Now comes the admin," I said. I opened my laptop. This was the part my family always mocked. Ulissa and her spreadsheets. Ulissa and her passwords. They called it boring. They didn't realize that administration is the highest form of self-defense. I logged into the utility accounts for the Crestview house. I removed my banking information. I set the accounts to close in 30 days, coinciding with the legal notice I had mailed. I logged into the mortgage portal. I canceled the autopay. A warning box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel recurring payments? I clicked yes. I logged into my email. I changed the password to a string of 30 random characters. I logged into Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, all the services Delia had been mooching off for years, and selected Sign out of all devices. Somewhere in Crestview Ridge, a screen went black. It was a petty victory, but it felt significant. It was the digital equivalent of turning off the lights in a room I was no longer willing to heat. Then, I went to the credit bureaus. I placed a total freeze on my Social Security number. No one could open a store card, a car loan, or a lemonade stand in my name without a PIN number that only existed in my head. You look intense, Benjamin said. He was unpacking the coffee maker, the first essential appliance. I am locking the doors, I said. All of them. Good, he said. He walked over and kissed the top of my head. You choose the level of contact. Liss, if you want 0, we do 0. If you want email only, we do email. I will enforce whatever line you draw. Thank you, I said, for not trying to fix it for me. I can't fix them, Benjamin said. I can only help you build the wall. Around 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I jumped. My heart hammered against my ribs. I expected Delia. I expected the police. It was Maribel. She was holding a tray of coffees and a bag of bagels. She shook her umbrella off on the porch and stepped inside, looking around the living room with a critical eye. Good light, she said. Solid floors, no water damage on the ceiling. It is small, I said. It is yours, Maribel corrected. She handed me a coffee. Black, no sugar, like your soul today. I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed a genuine laugh in weeks. It felt rusty, but good. How are they? I asked. I couldn't help it. Loud, Maribel said. I left the group chat this morning. Your mother is currently posting vague Bible verses about betrayal on Facebook. Delia is threatening to sue me for reading the deed. It is a circus, but the circus is in their tent, not yours. Maribel walked to the window and looked out at the line of trees swaying in the wind. You know, she said, this place sounds different. What do you mean? It sounds quiet, Maribel said. It has less of the sound of must. You know that sound, the sound of you must do this and you must be that. That sound eats the oxygen in a room. Here, there is just air. She was right. The silence in this house wasn't heavy. It was spacious. We were drinking our coffee when a car pulled up into the driveway. I saw it through the front window. It was my father's sedan. My stomach dropped. How did they find us? I didn't tell them, Maribel said, her face hardening. I didn't either, Benjamin said. The moving truck. I realized. It had the company logo on the side. They must have called the company pretending to be me, or they just followed the truck this morning. My mother got out of the car. She was holding a large casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. It was her classic move. The casserole was a white flag, a shield, and a bribe all wrapped in Pyrex. My father got out of the driver's side. He looked unstable on his feet. They walked up the path. My mother looked at the townhouse with a mixture of judgment and confusion. It wasn't grand enough for her drama. The doorbell rang. Benjamin moved to answer it, but I stopped him. No, I said. I do this. I opened the door. I did not open the screen door. I stood behind the mesh, looking out at them. Ulissa, my mother cried. She held up the casserole. We brought dinner, tuna noodle, your favorite, she smiled. A wavering, desperate smile that tried to erase the last 24 hours. Can we come in? It is freezing out here. No, I said. The word hung in the cold air. My mother blinked. What? You cannot come in, I said. This is my house. You are not invited. Ulissa, please, my father said. He looked gray. We just want to talk. We want to understand. You understand perfectly, I said. I explained it last night. The house is sold. You have 30 days. That is the conversation. We are your parents, my mother shouted, her voice cracking. You are treating us like strangers. I am treating you like adults, I said. I am treating you like people who are responsible for their own lives. I reached into my back pocket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. I unlocked the screen door just enough to slide the paper through the crack. What is this? My mother asked, staring at it like it was a bomb. A list, I said. There are 5 rental properties on there within your budget if you use Dad's pension and Tanner's income actually goes to rent. I called the landlords. They have vacancies. Rentals, my mother spat the word out. We are homeowners. You were guests, I corrected. Now you need to be tenants. I looked at my father. Dad, if you need a ride to your cardiologist appointments, I will take you. I will pick you up. Drive you there, wait, and drive you back. But I will not give you cash. I will not pay for the visit, and I will not talk about the house during the drive. My father looked at me. His eyes were watery. He nodded slowly. We messed up, Liz, he whispered. We know. We let it go too far. You didn't let it go, I said. You pushed it. Delia is hysterical, my mother said, shifting tactics. She is going to lose the babies if she keeps crying like this. Do you want that on your conscience? Delia's health is her responsibility, I said. If she is in danger, take her to a hospital. Do not bring her to me. My mother stared at me. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that the buttons she had installed in my psyche were disconnected. She pressed them, but nothing happened. Come on, Delilah, my father said, taking her arm. Let's go. But the casserole, my mother said, looking at the dish. Keep it, I said. You might need it for dinner. I am cooking for myself tonight. My father turned to lead my mother away, but then he paused. He looked back at me. He walked back to the door, leaving my mother by the car. Liz, he said. His voice was very low. Yeah, Dad. The bank loan, he said. The forgery. I stiffened. What about it? It wasn't just Delia, he said. He looked down at his shoes. Your mother, she told Delia to do it. She told her you wouldn't mind. She said, just handle the paperwork. Ulissa is too busy to be bothered. She told her to sign it. The words landed like cold coins on the pavement. I had suspected it, but hearing it was different. My mother hadn't just covered for Delia. She had commissioned the crime. She had viewed my identity as community property to be signed away by committee. I didn't ask, my father whispered. I heard them talking in the kitchen. I didn't ask. I should have asked. Yes, I said. You should have. I am sorry, he said. Goodbye, Dad, I said. He walked back to the car. My mother glared at me from the passenger seat, clutching her tuna casserole. They drove away. I closed the main door. I locked the deadbolt. I locked the handle lock. I slid the chain into place. Click, click, slide. I turned around. Benjamin was standing in the hallway. He hadn't heard the conversation, but he saw my face. Okay, he asked. Okay, I said. I walked into the kitchen. I pulled up my email on my phone. I drafted a message to my parents and Delia. Subject: communication boundaries. Effective immediately. All communication will be via email. Do not come to my home. Do not call my phone. If you come to my home, I will call the police for trespassing. If you harass me via phone, I will file for a restraining order. Delia is blocked on all platforms. Do not attempt to contact me on her behalf. The house closing is proceeding. You have 29 days remaining. Ulissa. I hit send. Then I blocked Delia's number. I blocked her Instagram. I blocked her TikTok. I blocked the accounts of her 3 best friends. I put the phone down on the counter. The townhouse was quiet. The wind rattled the window pane gently, a natural sound, not a human demand. I looked at the stack of boxes. I looked at Benjamin, who was starting to boil water for pasta. I didn't feel lonely. I didn't feel guilty. For the first time in 30 years, I felt like a key that had finally found its tumbler. I turned the lock in my mind, and the door to the past clicked shut. I was out. The war did not start with a subpoena. It started with a push notification. 48 hours after I left the house at Crestview Ridge, the digital assault began. It was Sunday morning. I was in my new kitchen in Lake Briar, making coffee and enjoying the silence. When Benjamin walked in, he was holding his phone like it was a piece of radioactive waste. "Do not look at Facebook," he said. "I blocked her," I said, pouring almond milk. "She can't reach me." "She doesn't need to reach you," Benjamin said grimly. "She is broadcasting to everyone else." He placed the phone on the counter. Against my better judgment, I looked. It was a video posted to Delia's public page. It had been uploaded 3 hours ago. It already had 4,000 shares. The thumbnail was Delia's face, close to the camera, tear-streaked and devoid of makeup. It was a calculated vulnerability. In the background, sad, ambient piano music played, the kind that trends on TikTok when someone wants to garner sympathy without providing evidence. I pressed play. "I never thought I would be making this video," Delia whispered, wiping a tear that tracked perfectly down her cheek. "You think you know people. You think you know your own blood. But then you get pregnant. With triplets. 3 miracles." She paused to sob. A jagged, gasping sound. "And instead of support," she continued, "my sister decided to make us homeless. She threw us out. Me, my fiancé, my elderly parents. She gave us 30 days, in the middle of winter, just because she has the money and we don't. She chose profit over family." The video cut to a black screen with white text, "Toxic family pregnancy journey abandoned triplets." There was no mention of the 2 years of mortgage payments I had covered, no mention of the forged loan application, no mention of the stolen rent money, just a simple, digestible narrative. Rich, cruel sister kicks out pregnant angel. "Read the comments," Benjamin said, scrolling down. "This is disgusting. What kind of monster does that? Drop her name. We will find her. Karma is coming for her. Is she jealous? She sounds barren and bitter." Then, I saw the clips. Someone at the Thanksgiving dinner, likely one of the influencers, had posted a snippet of the confrontation. But it was edited. It started exactly at the moment I said, "I am selling the house," and ended before I could explain that I owned it. In the clip, I looked cold. I looked severe in my black dress. I looked exactly like the villain Delia was painting me to be. "She edited out the part where she handed me the keys and demanded a mansion," I said, feeling a cold heat rise in my chest. "Of course she did," Benjamin said. "Context kills content. She needs a villain to drive engagement." "It is just noise," I said, turning away from the phone. "It is just people on the internet. They don't know me." "Liz," Benjamin said gently, "look at the next post." I looked. It was a photo of Delia standing in front of a glass office building. She hadn't named the company, but the geolocation tag was set to Financial District, Meridian Plaza. The caption read, "Going to try and plead with my sister's heart one last time. Maybe her corporate bosses taught her how to be this cold. Does anyone know if Vanguard Meridian has a policy against leaving pregnant women on the street? Just asking." My heart stopped. She hadn't named me, but she had named my employer. "She soft-doxed me," I whispered. "She is mobilizing a mob against your job," Benjamin said. "We need to call HR now." Monday morning at Vanguard Meridian Integrity Office was usually quiet. It was a place of hushed tones and clicking keyboards. But when I walked in, the receptionist, a sweet woman named Sarah, looked at me with wide, panicked eyes. "Ms. Winmere," she whispered, "Mr. Henderson wants to see you, immediately." I walked to the VP of Human Resources office. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I went into what Benjamin called audit mode. Mr. Henderson was sitting behind his desk, looking at a stack of printouts. He looked up as I entered. "Ulissa," he said. "Sit down." He slid the papers across the desk. They were emails, dozens of them, sent to the general inquiry inbox of the firm. Subject: fire. Ulissa Winmere. Subject: do you employ child abusers? Subject: boycott Vanguard Meridian. "We have had 50 of these in the last 2 hours, Henderson said. "Would you like to explain why the internet thinks our senior risk analyst is a monster?" I sat straight. I placed my hands on my lap. "Mr. Henderson," I said calmly, "I am currently the victim of a targeted harassment campaign by a family member who is attempting to extort real estate from me. The individual in question is upset because I have listed a property I solely own for sale, ending her rent-free tenancy." I reached into my briefcase. I didn't bring sob stories. I brought paper. I laid out the police report I had filed that morning regarding the harassment. I laid out the cease and desist letter my lawyer was drafting. I laid out the certified deed proving my ownership. "This is a private legal matter regarding a squatter situation," I said. "The narrative online is libel. I am handling it through proper legal channels. I apologize that the splash damage has hit the company firewall." Henderson read the documents. He was a risk man. He understood documentation. "She accused you of fraud in one of these emails," Henderson noted. "She forged my signature on a $50,000 loan application last month," I countered, sliding the rejection letter from the bank across the desk. "Which is the catalyst for her eviction. I can provide the handwriting analysis if legal requires it." Henderson blinked. He looked at the bank letter. He looked at me. "Okay," he said. He shredded the angry emails in his hand. "We will block the incoming spam. Security will be notified to filter any external calls asking for you. Keep this contained. Ulissa, we value your work, but we cannot have a circus in the lobby." "There will be no circus," I promised. "I am the one closing the tent." I walked out of the office. I had saved my job. But I felt dirty. Delia had dragged her mess into the one place I had kept pristine. She had violated the sanctuary of my competence. That night, Benjamin was pacing the living room of the townhouse. "We have to fight back," he said. "We can't just let her lie. Let's post the receipts. Let's post the deed. Let's post the Venmo history showing she stole Tanner's money. If we put it out there, the internet will turn on her in 5 minutes." "No," I said. "Why not?" Benjamin asked, frustrated. "She is destroying your reputation." "Because if I engage," I said, "I become content. I become a character in her season. I become the clapping back sister. I don't want to be a character, Ben. I want to be a person who owns a house and goes to work. So we just take the hits. We wait," I said. "Maribel told me once, people believe what they want to believe. You only speak when they are forced to believe." Delia escalated, finding that I wasn't responding to the public shaming. She shifted to monetization. She opened a baby registry on a high-end site. It wasn't just diapers and bottles. It was a wish list of luxury items: a $1,200 stroller, a designer crib, a nursery aesthetic package. She also added a housing fund link to her bio. My mother shared it on Facebook. "My poor baby is trying to build a nest from scratch after being blinded by her own flesh and blood. Please help if you can. God sees all." I watched the housing fund ticker go up. $500, $1,000. Strangers were paying for a lie because it was packaged in tears. Then, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a notification from the mob. It was a text message. From Tanner. "Ulissa, I need to talk to you." I stared at the screen. I hadn't heard from Tanner since he realized his rent money had been funding Delia's Sephora habit. "I don't think we should talk without lawyers." I replied. "Not about the house." Tanner wrote back. "About the triplets." My breath hitched. "What about them?" I asked. "I found something." Tanner wrote, "Can I come over?" "No." I typed immediately. "No guests. Send it by email." "It is messy. Liz." Tanner wrote, "I don't know who to trust. She is lying about everything. I tried to ask her about the doctor visits and she screamed at me for 2 hours. Email. I insisted. If you have evidence, send it. If you want to vent, call a therapist. I waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. What is it? Benjamin asked, seeing me stare at the phone. Tanner, I said. He is cracking. He was the only one paying, Benjamin said. He is the only one who lost real money. It makes sense he would wake up first. He says there is something about the triplets, I said. My laptop chimed. A new email had arrived. Sender Tanner Sloan. Subject. Look at the dates. I opened the email. There was no text in the body, just an attachment. It was a JPEG file. It was a scan of a document. I clicked to enlarge it. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It looked like a medical invoice. It was from a private ultrasound clinic, the kind you pay out of pocket to get 3D images for keepsakes, not a medical doctor's office. The invoice was dated 3 days before Thanksgiving. Client Delia Marrow. Service Baby Peak, 3D ultrasound package. Notes. Customer requested. Triplets stock overlay for prank/reveal. Waiver signed acknowledging images are for novelty use only and do not represent medical diagnosis. I read it again. Customer requested triplet stock overlay for prank/reveal. I felt the floor of the townhouse tilt slightly under my feet. Ben, I whispered. What? She isn't pregnant with triplets, I said. She bought a JPEG. Benjamin rushed to my side. He read the screen. He let out a low whistle. She faked it. It says novelty use only. I pointed to the fine print. She went to a mall kiosk clinic, paid them $40, and asked them to Photoshop 3 babies into a scan so she could make a reveal video. But she told the whole family, Benjamin said, his eyes wide. She told the internet. She is collecting donations for 3 babies. She built a fortress out of a JPEG, I said. I thought about the scene at the dinner table, the way she had stood up, holding the glass of cider, the way she had demanded a house because she needed space for 3 miracles. It wasn't just a lie to get a house. It was a lie that had gotten out of hand. She had started it for content, maybe for attention, and then, when the engagement spiked, when the likes poured in, she had doubled down. She had weaponized it against me. And my parents did, they know. Does she think she can fake 3 babies for 9 months? Benjamin asked. How does this end for her? It ends with a miscarriage, I said, the realization hitting me like ice water. That is her exit strategy. She plays the victim. She gets the house. She gets the money. And then tragedy strikes. She loses the babies. And she gets to keep the sympathy and the assets. It was monstrous. It was brilliant. And it was pure evil. What do we do? Benjamin asked. Do we post it now? I looked at the invoice. This was the nuclear bomb. This was the thing that would not just win the war, but salt the earth so nothing would ever grow in Delia's name again. But I remembered Maribel's advice. Prepare for when they have to believe. No, I said. We don't post it. If we post it, she screams fake news and says I photoshopped it to attack a grieving mother. Then what? We take it to the closing, I said. We take it to the mediation table. We use it to cut the cords, one by one. I hit reply on Tanner's email. Keep looking. Find the medical records. If she is pregnant at all, there must be a real doctor. Find out who... I closed the laptop. Outside, the wind was howling. But inside, I was perfectly still. The noise of the internet, the angry emails, the sobbing videos, it all faded into background static because I held the needle that would pop the balloon. Delia wanted to be famous. She wanted to be a star. Okay, Delia, I whispered to the empty room. I will help you. I will make sure the whole world sees exactly who you are. Truth is not a ghost. It does not haunt you. It waits. It sits in a file cabinet or a cloud server or a bank ledger, gathering dust until someone bothers to turn on the light. And when the light finally flickers on, the truth does not scream. It just points. For the next 48 hours, my dining room table in the townhouse became a war room. But unlike the chaotic, emotional war room Delia was running on social media, ours was silent. Ours was built on metadata. Tanner kept sending emails. He had become a mole in his own life, a man waking up to find he had been sleeping in a bed made of smoke. "Look at this," Benjamin said, pointing to his laptop screen on Tuesday evening. Tanner had sent a photo of a calendar he had found in the kitchen trash at Crestview Ridge. It was Delia's planner. She had marked Dr. H. checkup on 3 separate dates in October. "I called the number for this Dr. H., Benjamin said. "It is a pediatric dentist." "A dentist?" I asked, leaning in. "A pediatric dentist," Benjamin repeated. Delia has been telling Tanner she is going for high-risk prenatal scans, but she is writing down the number of a dentist. And look at the dates. October 12th, that was a Sunday. "Clinics aren't open on Sundays," I said. "Exactly," Benjamin said. "She isn't going to appointments. Ulissa. She is driving to a coffee shop, sitting there for an hour, and coming home with a story about heartbeats. We didn't celebrate. We didn't high-five. We just added the printout to the stack. This was the medical pile. It was growing, but it was still circumstantial. To evict a pregnant woman or a woman claiming to be pregnant, we needed more than a wrong phone number. We needed a judge to see a pattern of deception so dense that it blocked out the sun. "We need to push her," I said. "We need to force her to put the lie on legal letterhead." I called my lawyer. A sharp, unexcitable man named Mr. Vance. "Send a request," I instructed him. "Tell her legal counsel that if they plan to contest the eviction based on her medical condition, we require a sworn affidavit from a licensed obstetrician confirming the high-risk status and the triplet pregnancy. Give them 48 hours. Mr. Vance sent the letter. Delia's response came the next day. It didn't come from a reputable firm. It came from a solo practitioner who operated out of a strip mall next to a dry cleaner. The letterhead looked like it had been designed in Microsoft Word. The letter was a masterpiece of legal gibberish. It claimed adverse possession, a law that requires a squatter to occupy a property for nearly 20 years, not 2. It claimed promissory estoppel, arguing that my verbal promise to help the family constituted a binding lifetime lease. But nowhere in the 3-page rant did it include a doctor's note. Instead, it included a threat. "My client is in a delicate condition." The lawyer wrote, "Any further stress caused by your unreasonable demands will be considered intentional infliction of emotional distress. We reserve the right to seek damages for the potential loss of the pregnancy." "She is doubling down," Benjamin said, reading the letter. "She is setting up the miscarriage narrative. If you evict her, she loses the babies, and it is your fault." "She is playing chicken with biology," I said. But while Delia was playing games with medical ethics, I was following the money. And the money led me to a dark corner of the internet I hadn't expected. I had asked the bank to investigate the IP address associated with the forged HELOC application, the $50,000 loan against my house that had started this entire avalanche. The bank's fraud department was slow, but my own internal audit skills were fast. I had access to the router logs from the Crestview house because the internet account was still technically in my name. Even though I had suspended the service effective next week, I pulled the history. On the date the HELOC application was submitted, at the exact timestamp stamped on the digital form, there was only one device active on the network. Device name Delia's MacBook Air. Activity secure upload. I cross-referenced it at that exact same minute. The device was also logged into the Gmail account Delia creates content, the same email address she used to solicit donations for the nursery fund. I sat back in my chair. The cold air of the townhouse felt suddenly freezing. "It wasn't a hacker," I told Benjamin. "And it wasn't Mom. It was Delia. She filled out the application on her laptop, signed my name, and hit send. Then she tabbed over to her email to ask strangers for money." "That is wire fraud," Benjamin said. "That is federal." "It is," I said, "and I can prove it." I was about to close the laptop when another notification pinged. It was from a credit card issuer, An old card I hadn't used in 5 years. I had kept it open for credit age, tucked away in a drawer at the Crestview house. I had forgotten to retrieve it when I moved out years ago. Alert suspicious activity detected. I logged in. My heart hammered against my ribs. There were charges, recent ones. Home Depot, $1,200. Ace Hardware, $400. Sherwin-Williams Paints, $300. The dates matched the renovation series Delia had posted on YouTube 6 months ago. The series where she claimed she was investing her own hard-earned money to upgrade the kitchen for the family. I felt sick. She had solicited donations from fans to pay for the renovation. She had taken money from Tanner to pay for the renovation. She had taken checks from my father to pay for the renovation. And then, she had stolen my old credit card from the desk drawer and used my money to buy the actual paint and lumber. She had been paid 3 times for a project she didn't pay a dime for. She had turned a kitchen remodel into a profit center, and I was the one footing the bill for the materials. She is not just a squatter, I whispered. She is a parasite, a sophisticated, multi-host parasite. I printed the statements. The stack of paper on the table was now thick enough to be a weapon. My phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. I had set a boundary email only, but the discoveries of the last hour were buzzing in my blood. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to know if she knew. I picked up. "Ulissa," my mother sobbed immediately. "Thank God you answered. You have to stop this. Delia is falling apart. She is terrified." "She should be," I said. "Federal prison is a terrifying place." "What?" My mother's crying stopped abruptly. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the HELOC. Mom," I said. "I have the IP logs. I know she used her laptop to forge my signature. And I know about the credit card, the Visa ending in 5582. She stole it from the desk and used it to pay for the kitchen, while taking money from you and Dad." There was silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. "She didn't mean to steal," my mother stammered, her voice dropping to a whisper. "She was just borrowing it. She was going to pay it back when the channel got big. She was just managing cash flow." "She committed identity theft," I said. "Twice." "She is your sister," my mother screamed, the panic rising again. "She is pregnant. She is hormonal. She isn't thinking clearly. You can't hold a pregnant woman responsible for a little mix-up with paperwork. She is scared. Ulissa panic makes people do crazy things. Panic does not create a fake signature, Mom," I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria like a scalpel. "Panic does not enter a 16-digit credit card number and a 3-digit security code. Panic does not set up a fake email address to route bank alerts away from me. That is not panic. That is planning." "You are cold," my mother spat. "You are ice cold. You care more about money than blood." "I care about consent," I said. "And you never asked for mine. You just took—" I hung up. I didn't feel guilty. I felt lighter. The poor Delia narrative was dissolving under the acid of facts. The next morning, Maribel came by. She didn't bring coffee this time. She brought a small, green postcard. "It arrived," Maribel said, placing it on the table. It was the return receipt for the certified mail. The notice to quit. I looked at the signature box. Received by Delia Marrow. Date November 28th. "She signed for it," Maribel said. "She can't tell the judge she didn't know. She can't say it got lost in the mail. She held the eviction notice in her hand and signed her name." "This is the lock," I said, tracing the signature. "It is," Maribel agreed, "but she is going to try to break the door down anyway. Have you seen the flyers?" "What flyers?" Maribel pulled a piece of paper from her bag. It was a printed invitation. It was pink and blue, covered in glitter graphics. "Save the Triplets, a community baby shower rally for Delia Marrow. Location, the Windmere family home for now. Crestview Ridge. Date Saturday, December 15th. Invited the press, the neighbors, and anyone with a heart." I stared at the flyer. Delia wasn't just ignoring the eviction. She was hosting a public event at the house 2 days before she was legally required to vacate. She was inviting the local news. She was inviting the neighborhood. She is turning the eviction into a spectacle, Benjamin said, reading over my shoulder. She wants the police to come and drag her out in front of a camera crew while she is holding a baby booty. It is a trap, I said. If I try to stop it, I look like the villain shutting down a baby shower. If I let it happen, she cements her claim on the house in the public eye. So what do we do? Benjamin asked. Do we call the cops now? Do we shut off the power? I looked at the flyer. I looked at the stack of evidence, the fake ultrasound invoice, the fraud logs, the stolen credit card statements, the green receipt. I realized Delia was playing a game of emotions. She was betting on the fact that I would be too ashamed to make a scene. She was betting that family business meant secret business. But she had forgotten who I was. I was a risk analyst. I didn't fear scenes. I feared undocumented liabilities. We don't go to the shower, I said. We just let her have it. Let her have her party, I said. Let her pile up the gifts she bought with stolen money. Let her cry to the cameras. It doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? Because the closing date isn't decided by a party, I said. It is decided by a contract. I turned to Benjamin. Call Mr. Vance. Tell him to set up a mediation hearing, emergency session, before the closing date. You want to negotiate? Benjamin asked. Confused? No, I said. I don't want to negotiate. I want to put her in a room with a court reporter, a lawyer, and a stack of perjury warnings. I want to see if she can keep up the Pregnant with Triplets Act when lying becomes a crime. Mediation, Maribel nodded approval. Smart. It is private, no cameras, just facts. Exactly, I said. She wants a stage. I am going to give her a deposition. I picked up the green receipt card. She thinks she is fighting for a house, I said. She doesn't realize she is fighting to stay out of jail. I looked at the date on the flyer. December 15th. Let her have her shower, I said. But the day after, we meet at the table, and I am bringing the receipts. The doorbell rang. It was a courier. Another package from Tanner. I opened it. Inside was a single USB drive. I plugged it into the laptop. A video file popped up. It was shaky, filmed on a phone from inside a car. The video showed Delia walking out of the clinic, the pediatric dentist's office. She wasn't holding an ultrasound. She was holding a cigarette. She stood by her car, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and lit it. She took a long drag, exhaled, and then threw the butt on the ground before getting in her car. Pregnant women don't smoke, Benjamin said quietly. Especially not with high-risk triplets, I added. I ejected the drive. That is it, I said. That is the end. I put the drive in the envelope with the other papers. Get the suit ready. Ben, I said. We are going to mediation. The closing date was a circle on the calendar that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. December 20th. That was the deadline. That was the day the investor group, a limited liability company that cared about profit margins. Not family drama, would take possession of the house at Crestview Ridge. But as any risk analyst knows, the closer you get to the deadline, the more erratic the variables become, and Delia was a variable that refused to be solved. It started with a phone call from Sarah, my listing agent. It was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. Sarah was a woman of steel, accustomed to difficult divorces and bankruptcies, but her voice was tight. Ulissa, she said, we have a problem with the showings. Did she refuse to let you in? I asked, staring at my dual monitors in my home office. Worse, Sarah said. She let us in, but she had staged the house. Staged it, I thought she was refusing to pack. Not staged to sell, Sarah clarified. Staged to terrify. When I walked in with the prospective buyers, a nice couple looking for an investment property, there was caution tape over the basement door, and she had taped a handwritten sign to the living room wall. I closed my eyes. What did the sign say? It said, warning, toxic black mold. Breathe at your own risk. I rubbed my temples. Is there mold? Sarah? I checked. Sarah said, It is just a smudge of black shoe polish she smeared near the vent. I touched it. It came off on my finger. But the buyers didn't wait for me to test it. They walked out, and as they were leaving, your sister was sitting on the porch swing, blasting death metal music and telling them that the previous owner you hated orphans. She is sabotaging the asset, I said. My voice was calm, but my hand was gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were white. She is trying to make the house unsellable so you have to keep it, Sarah said. If the investors pull out because of the tenants, we lose the deal. They won't pull out, I said. They are buying the property, not the drama. I will handle the mold sign. I hung up. I didn't call Delia. I didn't feed the beast. Instead, I called a licensed property inspector. I paid for a rush job. I wanted a report. I wanted an official document stating that the house was clean, safe, and that the only toxic thing inside was the personality of the occupant. 2 days later, the inspector sent me his report. It was 40 pages long. It did confirm there was no mold, but it found something else. It found the renovations. I sat at the kitchen table with Benjamin, flipping through the photos. Look at this, I said, pointing to a photo of the kitchen backsplash, the one Delia had claimed cost $3,000 in materials. The photo showed a gap where the tile met the counter. Behind the tile, the drywall was crumbling. Note from Inspector Backsplash installed incorrectly over water-damaged drywall. No moisture barrier used. Tiles are peel and stick composite, not ceramic. Estimated material cost $200. I turned the page to the electrical section. Note from Inspector new lighting fixture in the nursery/studio is a fire hazard. Wires are taped together with masking tape. Not electrical tape. No junction box installed. Immediate repair required. She didn't renovate, Benjamin said, his voice quiet with awe. She camouflaged. She took the money, I said. She took $5,000 from Dad. She took $3,000 from Tanner. She charged $1,500 to my stolen credit card for materials. That is nearly $10,000. I looked at the peel and stick tile in the photo, and she spent maybe $500, I calculated. She pocketed the rest. She has been living inside a set piece. Ben, it is all fake. The walls, the pregnancy, the renovation. It is just a backdrop for a camera. This wasn't just sloppy DIY. It was proof of intent. She hadn't tried to improve the home. She had tried to extract value from it while letting it rot. My phone rang. It was my mother. I debated answering. We were on strict email-only terms, but if I didn't answer, she would call the police for a welfare check on me, a tactic she had threatened yesterday. This is Ulissa, I answered. Ulissa, please. My mother's voice was wet and trembling. You have to stop the showings. Delia is in distress. The stress of strangers walking through the house, it is bad for the babies. Can't we just pause? Pause, I repeated. Just until spring, my mother begged. Just until the babies come. We can sell it then. We can figure it out. Just give us a few months to breathe. Why does everything have to be so fast? I looked at the inspection report. I looked at the picture of the fire hazard wiring. Mom, I said. I paused my life for 30 years. What? I paused buying my own home so I could pay your rent, I said. I paused my savings to pay your debts. I paused my own comfort so Delia wouldn't have to feel the consequences of her actions. I have been on pause since I was 10 years old, and you told me to be easy about the birthday cake. Don't bring up the cake, my mother snapped. That is petty. It is a pattern, I said. And the pause button is broken. I am pressing play. The sale proceeds. I hung up. I felt a pang of guilt, the old programming trying to reboot. But then my email pinged. It was Tanner. Subject, you need to hear this. Attachment audio _file _04.m4a. I clicked the file. It was a voice memo. The quality was clear, recorded in a quiet room, likely a car. It was Delia's voice. She was laughing. She sounded relaxed, arrogant. "Oh, don't worry about Ulissa," Delia's voice said. "She acts tough, but she is terrified of public embarrassment. That is the trick. You just have to make a scene, scream a little, cry in front of people. She hates that. She will pay anything to make the noise stop. It is like a vending machine. I kick it, and money comes out." There was a pause, and then the sound of her inhaling smoking. "She always pays," Delia said. "She thinks she is saving me, but really, she is just paying me to shut up. It is the easiest money I make." I sat in silence. Benjamin had heard it too. He looked furious. "She thinks you are a vending machine," he said. "I was," I said. "But she just found out the machine is out of order." I forwarded the file to my lawyer. "Mr. Vance, add this to the mediation file," I typed. "Proof of manipulative intent." That afternoon, the phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize, a local hospital. "Ms. Winmere?" a nurse asked. "We have your father, Trent Winmere, in the ear." My blood ran cold. The anger vanished, replaced by the instinctual terror of a child. Is it a heart attack?" "It was a dizzy spell," the nurse said. "His blood pressure spiked. He is stable, but he needs a ride home. He put you down as his emergency contact. He said his wife wasn't answering." Of course she wasn't answering. She was probably busy making Save the House posters with Delia. "I am on my way," I said. I drove to the hospital. I walked into the ER. My father was sitting in a wheelchair near the discharge desk. He looked small. His coat was too big for him. "Liz," he said when he saw me. He looked ashamed. "Let's go." "Dad," I said. I wheeled him to my car. I helped him in. I drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. "The doctor said it was stress," my father said, staring out the window. "I imagine it is," I said. "Your mother, she is falling apart," he said. "She doesn't know what to do. Delia is screaming all day." He turned to look at me. "Liz, if you just let us stay, just for a year, I could pay you rent, real rent this time." I kept my eyes on the road. "You can't afford real rent. Dad, you gave your pension to Delia for a kitchen she faked." He flinched. "I didn't know. Ignorance is expensive," I said. I pulled up to the curb at Crestview Ridge. The for sale sign was in the yard, looking stark against the gray sky. "I love you, Dad," I said. "I paid your copay today. I will drive you to your follow-up next week. I will bring you groceries if you're hungry. But I will not buy this house back. The closing is on the 20th. He looked at me. He saw the wall. It wasn't angry. It was just there. "You really changed," he whispered. "I had to," I said. "To survive you." He got out of the car. He walked up the driveway, a slow, defeated figure. I watched him go inside. Then I drove away. I didn't cry. I just felt tired. When I got home, Benjamin was staring at his phone with a look of disbelief. "You won't believe this," he said. "What?" "Delia messaged me," he said. "Directly." He showed me the screen. It was a long paragraph sent via Instagram DM. "Hey Ben, look, I know Ulissa is being crazy right now. She is so emotional, but you are a guy. You are logical. Let's make a deal. If you can get her to call off the lawyers, I will leave the house, but I need a place to land. If you guys buy me a smaller place, maybe a 3-bedroom condo downtown, I can frame it as a downsizing journey for my channel. It would be great content. I would even tag Ulissa and say she is a hero. It is a win-win. Think about it. It is cheaper than a lawsuit." I stared at the message. She was trying to negotiate a settlement where I bought her a condo in exchange for her not destroying my reputation. She was treating her own eviction like a brand deal. "She thinks this is a collaboration," I said. Benjamin typed his reply. He didn't ask me what to say. He knew. All settlement offers must be submitted through our attorney. "Mr. Vance, do not contact me again." He hit send. 3 seconds later, the typing bubble appeared. Then it disappeared. Then a single message came back. "You are both dead to me." "Well," Benjamin said, putting the phone down. That is that. The next morning, Mr. Vance called. His voice was brisk. Ulissa, he said. We got the discovery package from Delia's lawyer. Did they send the medical records? I asked. The affidavit from the OB/GYN confirming the triplets. No, Mr. Vance said. They sent a screenshot. A screenshot. A low-resolution screenshot of what appears to be a patient portal. Mr. Vance said. It lists patient Delia Marrow and condition pregnancy, but there is no doctor's name, no medical license number, no clinic header, and the date is cut off. It is fake, I said. It is inadmissible. Mr. Vance corrected. I told her lawyer that unless we receive a certified medical record by the mediation hearing, we will move for immediate summary judgment on the eviction and file a motion for sanctions. And her lawyer sounded tired. Mr. Vance said, He knows. He knows he is defending a phantom. The walls were closing in on her, the financial walls, the legal walls, the physical walls, but the final blow came from the community she thought she owned. That evening, I received an email at my personal address. The subject line was simply, I know her. It was from a woman named Sarah, a different Sarah. Dear Ulissa, I saw the video your sister posted about you abandoning her. It went viral in our local mom group, but I recognized her. We went to college together 6 years ago. Her name was Dee back then. She ran a GoFundMe for a life-saving surgery she needed in Switzerland. We all donated. We raised $4,000. 2 weeks later, she posted photos from a beach in Tulum. She claimed the surgery was a success and the beach was for recovery. But we found out later there was no surgery. She just wanted a vacation. I have the screenshots of the old campaign. I have the photos. I thought you might need them. She does this. It is her cycle. I looked at the attachment. There was a younger Delia, looking tragic in a hospital gown that looked suspiciously like a costume, asking for money, and then Delia in a bikini, holding a margarita. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a career path. She has done this before, I told Benjamin. She fakes a crisis, collects the cash, and pivots to a new storyline when the truth gets too close. But she can't pivot this time, Benjamin said. She promised triplets. You can't fake 3 babies for much longer. That is why she is dangerous, I said. She is cornered. She has taken money for a house she doesn't own, for a renovation she didn't do, and for babies she doesn't have. My phone buzzed. A notification from Mr. Vance. Mediation is confirmed. December 18th, 2 days before closing. Attendance is mandatory. I looked at the date. It was in 3 days. Then, one final text came from Delia. Not to Benjamin, to me. You think you are winning, but if I go down, I am taking the whole family with me. I will tell them Dad knew about the loan. I will tell them Mom helped me. I will burn it all down. I looked at the message. It was the threat of a person holding a match in a room full of gasoline. Not realizing she was the one soaked in fuel, I didn't reply. I just forwarded it to the lawyer. Let her burn it, I whispered. I am already out of the house. The mediation was set. The evidence was gathered. The stage was cleared. It was time to end the show. The conference room at the mediation center smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee. It was a neutral ground, a place designed to strip away emotion and leave only the hard skeleton of the law. But when Delia walked in, she brought the theater with her. She was wearing a maternity dress that was 2 sizes too big, framing a stomach that looked significantly larger than it had been at Thanksgiving. She held a file folder against her chest like a shield. My mother walked in behind her, clutching a tissue, her eyes red-rimmed. My father followed, looking at the floor, and then there was Tanner. He didn't sit with them. He walked to the far end of the table and sat in the chair closest to the door, leaving 3 empty seats between him and his fiancée. My lawyer, Mr. Vance, sat next to me. He opened his briefcase. It was a quiet click, but in the silence of the room, it sounded like a pistol being cocked. Let us begin, the mediator said. We are here to resolve the dispute regarding the property at 124 Oak Street prior to the closing date of December 20th. Delia's lawyer, a man named Mr. Blanton, who wore a suit that was slightly too shiny, cleared his throat. My client, Mr. Blanton began, gesturing to Delia, is a victim of familial abandonment. We are talking about a pregnant woman, carrying triplets, who was promised a home. This eviction is not just a legal issue, it is a moral failure. We are asking for a stay of eviction for 6 months and a settlement of $50,000 for emotional distress. Delia dabbed her eyes. My mother reached out and patted her hand. Mr. Vance didn't look up from his notepad. Ownership, he said simply. Excuse me, Mr. Blanton asked, does your client claim ownership of the property? Mr. Vance asked. Well, not on paper. Mr. Blanton admitted. But there was a verbal contract, a promise. There was no promise, I said. My voice was steady. There was charity, and charity is revocable. Mr. Vance slid the first document across the table. This is the grant deed. Mr. Vance said, sole owner, Ulissa Winmere. This is the mortgage note. Sole borrower, Ulissa Winmere. And this? He slid a second document, a thick stack of paper. This is the forensic accounting of the household finances. Mr. Vance looked at Delia. Mrs. Marrow, you claim my client abandoned you financially, yet these records show that for 2 years, she paid every single bill associated with the property. In contrast, here is the history of the contributions you collected. He pointed to a highlighted line. $50,000. Mr. Vance read, that is the amount attempted to be secured via a home equity line of credit application submitted on November 12th. The application was signed Ulissa Winmere. However, the IP address traces directly to your laptop. Ms. Marrow. Delia froze. Her hand stopped dabbing her eyes. That is a lie, she whispered. Someone hacked me. And the voice memo, I asked. I placed my phone on the table. I pressed play. Delia's voice filled the room, tinny but unmistakable. She acts tough, but she is terrified of public embarrassment. It is like a vending machine. I kick it, and money comes out. My mother gasped. She looked at Delia. Delia, you said that... Delia's face flushed a deep, angry red. I was venting, I was stressed. It doesn't mean anything. It proves malicious intent. Mr. Vance said, it proves that your tenancy was not based on a family promise, but on a calculated strategy of financial extraction. Mr. Blanton shifted in his seat. He looked at his client. You didn't tell me about the recording. It doesn't matter, Delia snapped. I am pregnant. You can't evict a woman carrying 3 babies. The judge won't allow it. Ah, the babies, Mr. Vance said. Let us discuss the triplets. He turned to Tanner. Mr. Sloan, you provided some interesting documentation this week. Tanner stood up. He didn't look at Delia. He looked at the mediator. I transferred $1,200 a month to Delia for 2 years. Tanner said. His voice was flat, devoid of the hope I had seen in it for so long. She told me it was for the mortgage. She told me she was giving it to Ulissa. He slid a stack of bank statements across the table. She kept it, Tanner said. She spent it on clothes, on trips, on branding, and when I asked her about the nursery fund, the money her parents gave her, she couldn't produce a single receipt for baby furniture. Tanner, Delia screamed, you are siding with her. She is the enemy. She didn't rob me. Delia, Tanner said. You did. Delia looked around the room. The walls were closing in. Her mother looked confused. Her father looked devastated. Her fiancé looked done. It doesn't matter about the money, Delia yelled. Standing up. I have rights. I have medical rights. The triplets need a home. Prove they exist, I said. The room went silent. Excuse me, Mr. Blanton said. That is an outrageous accusation. We requested a sworn affidavit from a licensed obstetrician 48 hours ago. Mr. Vance said. You sent us a screenshot of a patient portal with no provider name. That is not evidence. That is a JPEG. Mr. Vance leaned forward. Ms. Marrow, if you are pregnant with triplets, surely you have a doctor, a specialist. High-risk pregnancies require weekly monitoring. Give us a name. Right now. We will call them on speakerphone. Delia's eyes darted around the room. She looked at her lawyer. She looked at the door. I switched doctors, she stammered. The old one was incompetent. I am between providers. You are between providers in the second trimester of a triplet pregnancy, I asked. It is complicated, Delia shouted. Maybe it isn't 3. The last scan was fuzzy. It might be twins, or 1. Stress can make you lose them. You know? You are stressing me out. So it is not 3, I said, and you don't have a doctor. And the ultrasound invoice Tanner found was from a novelty clinic that sells prank photos. My mother stood up slowly. She looked at Delia's stomach. Delia, my mother whispered. Is there a baby? Delia looked at our mother. For a second, I thought she would confess. I thought she would break. But she didn't. She sneered. You are all pathetic, Delia spat. You don't deserve to know. You don't deserve my miracles. Mr. Blanton, her lawyer, closed his folder. He stood up. I am requesting a recess, he said. Then he looked at Delia. Actually, no, I am withdrawing from this matter. I cannot represent a client who fabricates material facts to the court. I am out. He picked up his briefcase and walked out of the room. The door clicked shut behind him. The silence that followed was absolute. My father put his head in his hands. My mother sat down heavily, as if her legs had turned to water. They had bet everything, their pension, their relationship with me, their integrity on a daughter who had lied about the very existence of the grandchildren they were trying to house. Delia stood alone. Her lawyer was gone. Her fiancé was gone. Her parents were broken. I looked at her. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel the rush of victory. I just felt a profound, exhausting sadness. The closing is on the 20th, I said. That is in 2 days. You can't do this, Delia whispered. I have nowhere to go. I know, I said. I pulled a final document from my folder. This is not a legal requirement, I said. This is a gift, the last one I will ever give. I slid the paper toward my parents. The house will sell. The market is hot, after the mortgage is paid off, and the closing costs, and the liens for the repairs Delia faked are settled. There might be some equity left, maybe $40,000. Maybe 50, I looked at my father. I am placing that money into a trust, I said. Maribel Dane is the trustee. The money can be used for your rent. Dad, for your medical bills, for food. I turned to Delia. You cannot touch it, I said. Maribel has strict instructions. Not 1 penny goes to Delia Marrow, not for a business idea, not for a brand, not for bail. Delia's face twisted. You are cutting me out. I am your sister. You are a liability, I said. You ruined my life, Delia screamed. She grabbed the water pitcher from the table and threw it. It smashed against the wall, shattering into wet shards. You ruined everything. I had a plan. I had a future. No, I said. I stood up. I didn't ruin your life. Delia, I just stopped being an ATM machine with legs. I turned to my parents. The movers will be there tomorrow to take your things to the storage unit I paid for. The first month is free. After that, it is on you. Liz, my father whispered. I am sorry. I know, I said. Goodbye, Dad. I walked out of the mediation room. I walked past Tanner, who was sitting with his head back against the wall. Eyes closed, I walked out into the cold winter air. The closing happened 2 days later. I didn't go. I gave Maribel power of attorney to sign for me. I didn't want to see the house again. I didn't want to see the key exchange. To me, that house had ceased to be a structure the moment I walked out on Thanksgiving. It was just a ledger entry that needed to be zeroed out. The investors bought it. They planned to flip it. They would paint over Delia's fake backsplash. They would fix the dangerous wiring. They would erase the toxic mold sign. They would make it a blank slate for someone else. My parents moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment 3 towns over. Maribel told me that my father was working part-time at a hardware store to make ends meet. My mother was quiet. She had stopped posting on Facebook. Delia vanished. Not in reality, she was undoubtedly crashing on a friend's couch, spinning a new web of lies, but she vanished from my digital world, with no house to anchor her content, no triplets to drive engagement, and no sister to fund her lifestyle. Her channel withered. The Save the Triplets campaign was flagged for fraud and taken down. 6 months later, I was sitting in the living room of my townhouse in Lake Briar. It was a Sunday morning. The light was streaming in through the window, hitting the hardwood floors. It was quiet. Benjamin was in the kitchen, making pancakes. I opened the drawer of the side table. Inside was a small box of things I had saved from the old life. There was a photo. It was an old Polaroid of me and Delia when we were kids. We were sitting on the front porch of our childhood home. I was holding a book. Delia was wearing a plastic tiara, smiling at the camera, demanding to be the center of the frame. I looked at her face. I looked at the girl who would grow up to forge my signature and weaponize my love. I didn't feel hate. Hate is a connection. Hate implies that the other person still has power over you. I felt indifference. I placed the photo back in the box. I didn't tear it up. I didn't burn it. I just closed the drawer. "Breakfast is ready," Benjamin called out from the kitchen. "Coming," I said. I stood up. I walked toward the kitchen, toward the smell of coffee and the sound of a life that was paid for, verified, and wholly my own. I hadn't taken revenge. Revenge is a cycle. I had simply exited the role they had written for me. The lock clicked, the door was shut, and for the first time in 30 years, I was on the right side of it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please leave a comment below with your city or country, so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed this journey of justice and boundaries, please invite your friends to subscribe to the Juliet Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world to us.